to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video, and in this case, also a New York Jets video. In case you guys did not watch my first video of the day, something new I'm going to be doing. It will not be in this video, but the first video of the day, whenever I post a video, I'm going to ask you guys to give me your best video idea. What would be your suggestion that you would like to see? The person who receives the most likes, I will do a video on later in the day. Being that it's a slow time in the NFL world right now, there's always stories to do, but I want you guys to get the, you guys obviously are the people that view my videos, so I want the videos that you guys want to see are the videos that I'm going to produce. And JMG came up with this video idea, which I was a little surprised got the most votes. Not to say it wasn't a good idea. It's a great idea, but I'm a New York Giants channel. 47 likes already in just over a little bit over an hour. Video idea. Who's set better for the future, the New York Giants or the New York Jets? Short and simple, but it's not an easy answer. JMG with a great question, and a lot of people like the idea, so I'm going to make a video on it. I'm going to talk about the complete situation, the head coach, the quarterbacks, future cap space, the defense, the offense, everything, and the way that these two teams are structured. Now, obviously, I don't cover the New York Jets as closely as I cover the New York Giants. I always say I don't hate the New York Jets, and maybe that's why I have some Jets subscribers on my channel. I try to be fair. I never root against the Jets unless they're playing the Giants. Of course, I went to the Jets versus Giants game last year, and that was embarrassing. That's a game that I thought we were going to win. The Jets finished off the season relatively strong. They finished 7-9. They got the 11th pick, and I'll give my thoughts on what they did in the draft later on in the video. And most Jet fans on my channel will point to the fact that they got a new GM. They like what he's done so far. And New York Giants fans will point to the fact that we've got a new head coach, and they like what he's done so far. So I think both fan bases, based on the offseason, maybe not going into next year, are optimistic. They like the direction that the two teams are in. And in my opinion, both fan bases, if I'm being completely unbiased and objective, should be optimistic. Not necessarily for this year. Now, in terms of this year for the New York Jets, Tom Brady's gone. Got to be happy about that. Bill Belichick, still the head coach over there with New England. Buffalo is certainly a strong team, but the Jets have some reason for optimism. Now, I know they have a very tough schedule, but this video is not just about this year, the Jets and the Giants. It's about the next 5 to 10 years. He asked about the future. And obviously, where the future starts on an NFL football team, to me, well, it's with the head coach and, of course, the quarterback, the two most important positions on a football team as far as I'm concerned. And Adam Gase, obviously the New York Jets, came over from the Miami Dolphins and had moderately successful results, I guess you could say. They went 10-6, I think, his first season there as a head coach. And then they later regressed to right around the 7-9 mark, kind of what he did with the Jets last year, where they went 7-9. He's known as a quarterback guy. He was suggested by Peyton Manning early on in his career, and I think the Jets brought him in due in large part to that. I think they saw that they had a young quarterback with Sam Darnold. They wanted a guy that could get him going in the right direction. Now, will Gase be the guy when the Jets get good? Well, that remains to be seen. My guess would be no. I think most Jet fans don't view him as the long-term answer. Most Jet fans do not love Adam Gase. And they were upset when they brought him in, but seems to be the type of hire that the Giants brought in when they had Daniel Jones with Pat Shurmur. Now, of course, Shurmur was there the first year with Eli Manning, but I think the Giants knew the future of the franchise. They were going to be bringing in the guy to replace Eli Manning. They wanted a guy that was a good quarterback guy. That's why they brought in Pat Shurmur. I think it's the same scenario here with Gase. That was the main reason why the Jets brought him in. Darnold last year got a little bit better. We're going to get into the numbers. Did he take that huge sophomore jump? No. Now, part of that may have to do with the mono, but a big reason for that was because they didn't address that offensive line, something I will credit them for this season. But they did a really poor job of addressing the offensive line in Darnold's second season. Yes, they added Le'Veon Bell, but Le'Veon Bell couldn't run. The Jets averaged 3.3 yards a carry because they couldn't block. Now, the Jets definitely addressed that this year, and we'll see what Gase and Darnold could do with the improved offensive line. But so far with Gase, I guess, much like his tenure with the Miami Dolphins, it's been mediocre results at best. 7-9 season. That was probably about the expectations that you should have had. You moved on from Bowles. I always thought Bowles was kind of the opposite, kind of a very strong defensive mind, not so much an offensive guy. Gase is known to be the opposite. But he's a guy, I don't know. He doesn't get me excited. Let's put it that way. I don't think he gets Jets fans excited either. This guy, Joe Judge, with the New York Giants, and to be fair and to be completely unbiased, I can't speak on his results because he doesn't have any. He's never been a head coach. But if you're asking me, and I'm not being biased here, if you're asking me who I think has a higher probability of being that long-term answer, the 15-year head coach that could be getting the team to the promised land, I would say Joe Judge. And he's an unknown. I continue to say that. But I don't view Gase really as a great head coach or even a potential great head coach. Now, the Jets may find their next great head coach. Of course, they got the new GM with Douglas. Most Jet fans seem to be very excited about that. That doesn't mean that you can't find a great head coach next year, or maybe Gase develops into that. That's quite possible. But the one thing I will say, they're probably going to get a new head coach if I had to guess the Jets this year, especially if they don't win at least 7 or 8 games. If they win 6 games, I think they'll bring in a new guy to fit the culture of this football team. Now, the question you have to have if you're a Jet fan, is that new head coach going to like the players on your roster? Will he like Sam Darnold? Will he like the other parts of that football team? And a big part of the Jets this year, for Sam Darnold and his future, this is a put up or shut up year for Darnold. He will have to take a big jump, regardless of whether or not Gase stays on. And you know what? I'm fair with Darnold, and we're going to get more into him. But I think Darnold could be a good quarterback with the right supporting cast. As far as Judge goes, Judge has been very organized. He's got a clear plan. He knows what he wants, and it kind of fits what Dave Gettleman is all about. He's about building in the trenches. But Judge has brought in his guys. He's brought in his coaching staff. I think he's assembled a very strong coaching staff. Kind of a combination of inexperienced as well as extremely experienced guys like Jason Garrett, people like that. Freddie Kitchens, former head coaches, the tight ends coach. They've got a good balance, and most of them have experience with Joe Judge. They're very smart. I don't know the full detail about the Jets, like I said, because I don't follow the Jets as strongly as I follow the Giants. I know they got Greg Williams, and that's why the Jets' biggest strength is on the defensive side of the football, and that is a bright future for the Jets. But they do kind of have the same problem the Giants do in that they don't have a supreme pass rusher. But overall, if you ask me, I would give the edge in terms of the head coach to the New York Giants. I think Joe Judge has a much higher ceiling. I'll put it that way than that of an Adam Gase. To me, Adam Gase is kind of a run-of-the-mill head coach, but I could be wrong. Next thing we're going to talk about is the quarterback. And, of course, it was a huge controversy when the Jets selected Sam Darnold. Everybody said the Giants should have taken a quarterback or the Giants should have traded down. People laughed at the Giants, or some people did, for taking Barkley and not taking Darnold, who was thought to be the next future big thing. And that will continue to be the point of conversation for the next decade. Not just in that draft, but the draft prior. If Daniel Jones turns out to be the better quarterback, well, the Giants made the right decision in not taking a quarterback in the previous year's draft. Especially what you've seen with Rosen. Maybe Allen develops into something. I think Allen does have a very high ceiling. But if Daniel Jones is better than those quarterbacks, Dave Gettleman will look very smart, even though you could definitely argue that he should have traded down. But the fact that he didn't take a quarterback there and waited the following year and got a better one, Gettleman will look smart for getting the playmaker with Barkley and not making the mistake. Now, do I think Darnold's a mistake for the Jets? The first thing I'll say is it's way too early to tell, but I still think Darnold will be a good quarterback in the NFL. Do I think he's going to be great? That remains to be seen. Now, if I'm being fair, when I watch him play, I see some good, I see some bad. I don't watch him as closely as I watch Daniel Jones, but I even remember watching him his rookie year and saying, I could see a little bit of Andrew Luck in this guy. Not that I think he'll ever be Andrew Luck. He will not. But I see some similarities. He's somewhat mobile, a little more mobile than I initially anticipated. He's got a pretty strong arm, and the guy, he improved last year, and that's what you want to see as a New York Jets fan. His rookie year, he threw for 2,865 yards and 13 starts. He had an increase there. He threw for about 150 more yards in the same amount of starts. The completion percentage is where you really saw him progress. He went up to 62%. He was just under 58% in his rookie year. And his touchdowns went up, his interceptions went down. 19 touchdowns, 13 picks, as opposed to 17 and 15 in his rookie year. And, of course, his QB rating went up as well, 77 to 84. Now, was it the huge jump that you wanted? Maybe not, but some things need to be taken into account. Last year, the New York Jets did not address that offensive line, something that they did strongly this offseason. That should help Le'Veon Bell, and if Le'Veon Bell gets going, it should help Sam Darnold, and the same is going to be said for Daniel Jones. We're going to get into him in a minute. And they added some weapons, and we'll get into the free agent acquisitions, but I like some of the wide receivers the Jets added. Do I love them? Not necessarily. Crowder you added 2 years ago. I thought you overpaid, but he's a solid slot wide receiver, led your team in receiving with over 800 yards. You have a Nunwa coming back from injury. That should help Darnold as well. And Perryman was a guy that I really liked. You go back, you watch my Giants videos. If the Giants were going to add a free agent wide receiver, Quincy Enunwa was a guy that I was interested in. So I think they did a better job of helping Darnold out on the offensive side of the football this year, and he should get better going into year 3. And you look at that record with Darnold, they went 7-6. Obviously, he missed 3 games due to mono. Next guy we're going to talk about is Daniel Jones, and to me, Daniel Jones had as close to as good of a rookie year as you could have hoped for, based on the circumstances. The Giants had a ton of injuries at the offensive skill positions. They still had a bad offensive line. They did a great job of addressing that in year 2, something I think the Jets did a poor job of doing for Darnold in his year 2. So I think in that aspect, the Giants did a better job of supporting Daniel Jones in his second year. I thought the Jets didn't do as good of a job. This year with Joe Douglas, they did. They did what they had to do. But like I said, we'll get more into that. Jones, when you look at the statistics, I mean, the guy had 24 touchdowns. He had the same completion percentage that Darnold had in his second year. In his first year, he had 24 touchdowns, which is more than Darnold's ever thrown in any of his games. They played the same amount of games. As a matter of fact, Jones only started 12 games as opposed to 13. Had a higher QB rating. He was just better across the board statistically. Now, the 3-9 record is not comparable to that of Darnold at 7-6. And at the end of the day, this is not a video comparing quarterbacks. It's a video comparing the future of 2 teams. But of course, the quarterback and the head coach long term is what you're worried about. Who do I think will be better quarterback at the end of the day? My answer, an unbiased answer, is it's way too early to tell. I think both, if you surround them with the right pieces, could be very successful quarterbacks in this league. If I had to pick one, and I'm not being biased, I would say Daniel Jones at this point in time. Daniel Jones, of course, we all know needs to improve the fumbling problems. And if he doesn't improve the fumbling problems, he will not get much better. But I think he definitely could. You look at Lamar Jackson, lost 12 fumbles in his rookie year, and he got better. He learned better ball control. And what will help Daniel Jones in that aspect is the improved offensive line and is Saquon Barkley. If Barkley could remain healthy and the Giants could be an effective ground game, having an effective ground game, much like with the New York Jets and what they hope, I'm assuming they get with Le'Veon Bell with the improved O-line, that will help Jones. If I had to guess, I would say the Giants will have a stronger ground attack this year, which will help Daniel Jones be a better quarterback. But I do think Darnold will have some progression. But if I had to pick one right now, I'd say Jones, but I think it's very close. Next thing we're going to talk about is the surrounding pieces on offense. And trust me, I'm going to be unbiased. I'm going to get to the defense. I'm going to get to the offseason. I think the Jets did a good job. But the surrounding pieces on offense for these 2 teams. The Jets went out last year, in my opinion, made a mistake. I know Jets fans were excited that they brought in Le'Veon Bell. And I get that, right? He was a big name. He was off for a whole year, though. They signed him to a huge contract. They didn't have the pieces to support him. And this year, you're going to get a better test of Bell. Bell's got a year under his plate. But last year, he averaged, I think, 3.5 yards a carry, whatever it was. He's got to take a big step up. In terms of the other support, well, they added to that offensive line. They definitely did in the draft. They definitely did in free agency. And that should help Sam Darnold, much like it will Daniel Jones. I'll call that a wash, even though I think the Giants improved the offensive line more. The Jets had a really nice free agent acquisition with Connor McGovern, a center I was really interested in. The fact that you got a new one coming back who was projected to be your number 1 wide receiver last year, you got some chemistry with Jamison Crowder. Denzel Mims was a very good pick. The Jets were able to trade down and get him. A lot of people had him viewed as a first-round talent, back end of the first round. So Darnold definitely has a much improved supporting cast as opposed to previous years if they could remain healthy. And they got that going for them. And the same can be said for the New York Giants, and their supporting cast. You got Saquon Barkley, hopefully fully healthy. The wide receiving core, they didn't add much, but they got to stay healthy. If they stay healthy, Sterling Shepard is a very good wide receiver. Evan Ingram is a great target at the tight end position if he can stay on the football field. And the same, obviously, Saquon Barkley, to me, is the best weapon, not just in New York. He might be the best weapon in football at the running back position or the wide receiver position. That's how talented he is. The New York Giants, of course, improved the offensive line by bringing in Andrew Thomas. You would hope Will Hernandez will only get better. The early second-round pick from 2 years ago. Zeitler, to me, is a very strong guard. So I think Daniel Jones does have the pieces. Could he use a supreme wide receiver? Absolutely. And I think the Giants will attack that probably in next year's draft. And the same can be said for the Jets. The Jets have some nice weapons, and maybe Mims could become an elite wide receiver, but there's no way you could project that right now. He may not even start in his rookie year. The tight end position, the Jets have Herndon, and they have Ryan Griffin. That's adequate, but overall, the weaponry and the support system, it's close to a wash. But again, I'd probably give a slight edge to the New York Giants. On the offensive side of the football, in terms of supporting cast, I would give the edge to the New York Giants, not just in the present, but as of now, in the future. But I think it's relatively close. In terms of the defense, I mean, I can't argue it. The New York Jets defense right now is better. Now, the Giants, I'm not even going to go over their statistics because they have a completely new starting lineup. Half their starting lineup is new. They bring in a guy like Fackrell. Marcus Golden may or may not be back. Xavier McKinney is obviously going to start for the Giants. They've got Darnay Holmes will probably start. Julian Love will probably have a expanded role for a whole season. They have a completely new defense. The Jets last year had a great run defense. If you look all the way to the right, they ranked second in the league in yards against and yards per carry. They only surrendered 3.3 yards an attempt on the ground. I remember they held Le'Veon Bell to nothing, and they have a great defensive mind with Greg Williams. We don't know what we got in Patrick Graham. We know Patrick Graham's smart. We know he fits the philosophy of Joe Judge, but we don't know much else after that. Greg Williams is a very accomplished defensive coordinator. You hope that Quinnen Williams takes a step up. If you're a Jet fan, was a great potential player last year, a guy that I really liked in the draft. Didn't play phenomenal for them last year, but the Jets are definitely more advanced on the defensive side of the football. They also add Logan Ryan to what I thought was a pretty suspect secondary today. So he's a really good slot corner. That should only help the New York Jets. Desir, the starting corner. They had Ashton Davis later in the draft, and we'll get to some of those draft picks. But overall, if I'm being completely honest, I have to give the New York Jets the edge right now on defense based off of last year's standings. They also, of course, have Jamal Adams, who is the best defensive player on either football team. Jamal Adams is probably the best safety in football. I think he had 6.5 sacks last year at the position. He's a playmaker, and he's a great football player. In terms of the Giants, they've got a lot of young talent on this team. It's underdeveloped, and the coaching staff will have to get a lot out of it. But last year, the Giants had arguably the worst defense in football. They should be a lot better this year. I do believe that. Much like the Jets, they lack that supreme edge rusher, and they're going to have to develop a scheme to create pressure on the quarterback. And I think the Jets will have the same challenge. But I think they're kind of similar in where they're strong. I think the Jets and Giants both are pretty strong in that secondary. The Giants definitely have an emerging secondary with players like Peppers and McKinney. And they have a very strong interior defensive line by adding Leonard Williams. Jet fans will laugh at the trade, but Leonard Williams, to me, is still a good football player. Dexter Lawrence is a very good football player. Dalvin Tomlinson, a very good football player. So I do think the Giants could have a very strong run defense as well this year. They also have Blake Martinez and James Bradbury, who should only help to that defense. In terms of the free agent acquisitions, with the New York Jets, the Jets had kind of a more quiet offseason in terms of free agency to years past. Connor McGovern, the man shown in that picture to me, was a guy I really liked. They also added Fant, who should start on the offensive line. McGovern, I thought, was the best center available in free agency, something the New York Jets did not elect to do the previous offseason. Instead, they went with Mosley and Le'Veon Bell, and I thought he was a good acquisition. The Broncos had a poor offensive line last year, but the one guy who stood out was Connor McGovern. Perryman, again, another guy I really liked. It is only a one-year deal, but Brashard Perryman, I think he's a former first-round pick, showed glimpses last year with the Tampa Bay Bucs down the stretch, and maybe he could hit that second gear and become a good wide receiver in the NFL. I thought he was a sneaky pickup by them as well. In terms of their future cap space and flexibility, they have $60 million in cap next year. The Giants, I think, have 46 or 47, but both of them are set up very nicely for the next 3-4 years in terms of cap flexibility. We'll get more into that, but They and both of them are going to need it. They're going to need to retain Sam Darnold. The Giants are going to need to retain Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley for the Giants, so on and so forth. Quinnen Williams for the Jets. They both have a lot of young, talented players on their roster. In terms of the last 3 drafts overall, if we're being completely honest, the New York Giants have drafted better over the last 3 years as a whole, in my opinion at least. I don't even think that's a debate. I don't think the Jets had a very strong draft last year. This year they definitely did. I think the Giants did as well. But I do think the Giants have a better foundation in terms of the last 3 drafts. That's just my honest opinion. But overall, I think both of them have a pretty bright future. In terms of what they could do in cap space, now they had $60 million according to Sport Track. You could now cut Le'Veon Bell if need be. He would save you $9 million. Jamison Crowder carries almost no dead cap hit. He will be cut, in my opinion. That would save them another 10. Jamal Adams is going to stay, but just those 2 players there, if you were to cut both, and they very well may do that. The Jets also added a running back in the draft, rather. So that would save you another $20 million. So the Jets have good future cap flexibility, as do the Giants. And we're going to get into the Giants that right now, obviously in free agency, the big name was Bradbury. They had Blake Martinez. They had Toyolo, the strong blocking tight end. Fackrell on a 1-year deal. All short-term deals, as you see there. 3 years for 2 players. The rest are 2 years or shorter. giving the Giants a lot of cap flexibility after the 2021 season. So both the Giants and the Jets are set up nice in that area. In terms of next year's cap, right now it's 46 as opposed to 60, but the Giants have some moves as well. The cutting of Nate Solder seems inevitable. Would save them $14 million right out of the gate. Zeitler is a possibility. If Lemieux could fill in for the void, would save you another 12. And a guy like Golden Tate, like I said in my cap video, would save you another 6 if you were to move on from him, and they have other guys that they could move. But, of course, they're going to have decisions as well with guys on this roster in the future, which is why they're going to need that cap space in 2022, 2023 down the stretch, retaining guys like Evan Ingram on long-term deals, Peppers if you decide to, Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones. They have a lot of young talent based off the last few drafts, and they will need that cap space to retain those players. But if you're asking me right now who's got the better future, if I'm being completely honest, and this could change, I would say the New York Giants, and the tiebreaker for me is the head coach. I believe a lot more in Joe Judge as the long-term answer than Adam Gase for the New York Jets. In terms of the quarterback, I slightly believe more in Daniel Jones right now. Now, I definitely think Sam Darnold has not gotten a fair evaluation. I think with the improved offensive line and the improved weapons, Sam Darnold could definitely take a step up this year, but I think Daniel Jones will as well. I think both quarterbacks could definitely win in this league if you give them the pieces to succeed. That I will say, but I believe more in Joe Judge than I believe in Adam Gase. The general manager, Douglas, Jet fans will say has done a great job, and he has. I think you guys had a really strong offseason, and we'll see how you continue to build this roster. At the end of the day, I think both futures are incredibly bright. That's my honest opinion, and I think the Giants and the Jets could be very competitive for the next 5 years. This year, I think it'll be tough for both teams. Both teams have a tough schedule, and they're both coming out of it. But expect the Giants and the Jets to be competitive 2022 and beyond, and that's my honest opinion. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.